All right. Oh my God, everybody's wearing black but me. Way to go. Good afternoon. Hello.
Welcome back to our channel.
Yeah, welcome back to our insanity. That's perfect. It's yeah. Okay. I don't know. Well, I'm defaulting to someone. Okay, we're talking about planetary alignment, right? That's it? Yeah. Right now, that's it. Don't use it as an excuse. Right, without blame. Welcome back. We're glad to have you.
That was great.
Thanks.
That was so great.
This is terrible. How do you start? I don't know how to start. I don't know. Hi, welcome to the Wayfinders Crazy Town. I'm Missy and I'll be your escort to this crazy.
I like that. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yes. Okay, so today we're going to talk about planetary alignment and how it's affecting our life, how it's affecting our practice, how it's affecting our families. Did I miss anything else? No giggling at me across the table. Okay. Huh. So what do we want to talk about though? Like, what's the gist of this? Well, I am going to come straight out of the gate and say I don't know a whole heck of a lot about astrology. Astrology I find to be very complicated, and I struggle with that. I can read my horoscope in the back of the Virgo magazine, or Vogue magazine. Virgo magazine. See, I was all in with the woo. But I can't even still remember my rising, falling, whatever signs. I try, but it's just not where my head's at. So, but it does play into the collective, and I can start by saying what I can tell you based on our channeling is that depending on the astrological alignments and where Earth is at, gateways that we go through, that affects the planet, then the planet then affects us living on the planet because we're in alignment with Gaia. So, depending on what Gaia is going through, that we are also going through that. And it gets really crazy there, like things like latitude and longitude line up with your spine and different parts of your body. Gaia has chakra systems. It's really just a microcosm, macrocosm thing from what I understand. It's my perspective.
I also don't have much astrology background. It's interesting to me. There's so much, so I take it in bites. I have a hard time following the retrogrades, and it's almost constantly Mercury's in retrogrades like half the damn year, right? So,
well, it sure seems like it lately.
Yeah. You know, and then there's more and there's more. I mean, Mercury retrograde is the most well known. You know, that's the default meme, right?
Yeah.
The default meme. So that's the easiest one to blame things on. It's really interesting when you start getting in more into it. You see other people posting about the other ones, Saturn or Pluto and Venus and how that works. So can we start by what does, maybe not necessarily the planet specifically, but what is retrograde as a whole? What's that mean?
Retrograde just means it's going backwards, right? Or
it looks like it's going backwards. So what's that mean energetically for us?
That we would, rather than putting energy out, right, we look inward. That's or it's going to make changes inside us, bring to light things that aren't normally like in our awareness. Okay, but to complicate it, it really depends on your birth chart how each of these affects you. Yes, ignorance is bliss.
So, like for some, retrograde could be kind of like Heyoka, maybe. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes maybe the retrograde is backwards to what the norm meaning is. Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But it also depends because like Mercury retrograde doesn't always go retrograde in the same way. So like this Mercury retrograde was retrograde within the what moon cycle? The Aries moon cycle or something like that. So it means something different.
Mhm.
Whereas like next time it goes retrograde, it'll be in a different moon cycle. So it'll mean something different then too.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
does retrograde as a whole mean something like? How do I want to explain that? Kind of like when you have upward facing tarot versus reverse tarot.
Mhm.
Yep, upward is like normal, whatever. Reverse would be almost like the retrograde.
So
As
kind
a
of
whole,
like
to categorize what is retrograde as
Polarity.
right?
Polarity. It's
Yeah.
light and dark, shadow, light, earth, shadow, earth, whatever, however you want to refer to it.
I really like that explanation though, because if it's an upright card, you just read it. And in some decks, if it's upside down, it's like it's the medicine, it's the warning, it's the heed this, here's how you correct this.
Mhm.
And it's kind of what, if you're looking at Mercury retrograde, we were just talking, don't sign business contracts during that time. And that'd be kind of like your tarot card that comes in saying, hold off.
Right.
And before we started to sit down and talk about it, we were talking a little bit about that, about making decisions during retrograde, signing papers, contracts, even if you were to buy a house or something. So tell us a little bit more about why it's inadvisable, because this has gone mainstream.
Yeah.
There's now a makeup company, if you've heard of Anastasia Beverly Hills, they do eyeshadow. They have said on their Instagram that they won't even make business decisions during Mercury retrograde.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on one hand, I'm like,
I gotta go to
okay.
stores, I'm like,
And then on the other hand, I'm like, okay.
There's planner companies too making planners instead of by the
Mhm.
calendar, by moon phase. So
Yeah.
you're planning by your 28-day cycle by your moon phase, which is really
Mm.
awesome. And I know, I was
Mhm.
like, oh, my heart just is bursting with joy.
Because how long have people worked for this to be norm and
Right.
worked for, and I was going to say astrological again, but astrology is similar to, it's like they can put it in the back of Vogue magazine and people do take it. Like dreams and astrology are like okay topics to talk about, and now the third one I think is getting added in is the animal visits. Like you see more people being receptive of those topics than when you really get woo on them.
Right. So it's really cool to hear that, a major
Yeah.
company is outward with that. And that gives me so much hope.
Well, like with Mercury retrograde, if you're starting to make decisions, any kind of contract or any kind of major financial decision, Mercury retrograde is all about miscommunication and communication is going awry. So even if you're really looking over your contract, when I do that, I've had a couple of contracts to go through. I'm like, okay, I know it's Mercury retrograde, and I know I need to have this signed before the end of Mercury retrograde, and I am totally aware that anything could happen. I'm going to sign this anyway, knowing that something's going to go awry. And almost always it does. So
The awareness helps you to maybe
be prepared.
I was going to say to change your perspective, because we always talk about reframing and that's how you stay in the love and the light, and that's how you stay positive, is to take a negative situation or a perceived negative situation and reframe it to what is this doing for me instead of to me. And I think retrograde is just a planetary version of that. And not to blame it, I think that's the other thing that is worth discussing too, is it is the hot meme amongst people, like the Mercury retrograde, like blame it on Mercury retrograde. But in all actuality, I just think that blaming, a retrograde for a particular happenstance in your life, kind of brings you into a downward spiral. Can you edit that out?
I don't know. Maybe I'll try.
That was my dog bowl.
I was just gonna say, someone was saying, "Hell yeah, I agree."
Leave it.
Double down on this topic.
So I do think that to blame it is maybe not the course of action that we're looking for.
No, yeah, I agree. I think, when I started out on my spiritual path, kind of like realizing you're an empath, right? You feel all this stuff and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? And then you start realizing, oh, it's not me, it's somebody else. But this has also helped me when stuff kind of starts going awry. I'm like, what is going on astrologically? And once I figure that out, I'm like, oh, okay, now what do I need to know so that I'm on? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can be patient or prepared or laugh at it instead of.
That's usually my response. I just laugh because I'm like, there's just no sense in getting frustrated with what are you gonna do?
It's also a good time to reflect on how is this, whatever this is, serving me? Is there something about this that I'm agreeing to or deciding on or committing to that is out of alignment with what I should be doing? Because like if you sign a lease or a contract or whatever on something that doesn't check all your boxes, but you do it anyway just because you want to get it done, you want to get out there, right? And then all of a sudden it's Mercury retrograde and shit goes crazy, or in one way or another. Maybe you can look back and go, oh, it didn't have this, or it didn't have that, or this wasn't happening.
Yeah, right.
Does that
Then
make
we are
sense?
forcing ourselves into 3D
Right.
physicality again and forcing something when we should just be taking our cues and riding the wave.
So it just kind of indicates the flow, kind of like when you're out, if you were a seaman or whatever, and you're out,
She said semen.
and you're out navigating the ocean, and you're taking into account a lot of not only the weather, but the ocean tide, it all.
I would have said captain.
Yeah, I would have just said seaman either, or I would have really enunciated the man part.
A nautical person.
Nautical or any other. When you're
That's how we
navigating
think, though, Misty.
Sorry.
something else, I mean, you have, like, you go out in the world, other pretty well-known works, or your contractor trying to build on a project. You're not just going to be like, I'm doing this and I'm doing it now, and forcing it. There's other energies at play,
Right.
weather and things that's
The moon, especially if you're a nautical person.
right. But so, like, that's to me what it's telling me. So, like, when or deep sea fishing guys, they have all these equipment telling them the depth and the flow of the water and all of the different things. That's what, to me, these planetary alignments are. It's just giving me a picture so that I know where to flow with it. Like, okay, I mean, I could sit out there and try to,
Drop an
force
anchor.
it, drop an anchor, put my line out, blah, blah, and I'm not getting anything. In spite of, this is telling me I'm not going to get anything.
Right.
I'm going to do it anyway because I can, and I'm forcing it, and I'm gonna get this damn fish. Well, it's clearly saying now's not the right time. There are no fish here. So kind of, to me, that's, I guess, a parallel to how it can be versus, I didn't get any fish because I'm here and why, da, da, da. Well,
I think
are you
people
listening to the
struggle
cue?
with the surrender piece of that. Like, because we're so used to, this is my world and I'm going to pick up this pen now and put the pen down and I have control over my environment. And there's a certain piece of you that has to allow to flow. And I think that is really where most people struggle. So what's your go-to strategies for allowing to stay in the flow?
Take a breath.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if something's happening and you're like, I am forcing this doesn't feel right. What's your next thought? How do you reel that back in?
I think it's taking time, like literally stepping
Step
away,
away.
changing. Like, I'm thinking like at work or something, and so I'm forcing. I can't quite figure something out. Shifting gears, focusing on a different task.
Yeah.
Something that's less maybe mental intensive or number intensive, whatever it might be. So just switching what I'm doing, switching my focus. So if it's something in the woo, it would be, well, okay, if tarot is not working for me, maybe I try meditation, or maybe I try the runes, or maybe I just try and get a different, or just let it be and focus on maybe a client's something.
I'm gonna hone in on you because
Yes.
you just set yourself up.
Oh, shit.
So how do you avoid tool skipping then? So your tarot cards didn't tell you what you wanted to hear. Is it that you didn't hear what you wanted to hear, or is it that you're not, are we trying to force it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
From going from tool to tool, and then again with that blame piece and blaming the cards.
Like, that has happened where like you're not telling me what I want. I just recently had, you can ask my husband Nick, I have been like, something's changing, you're on a new course, something new, and it's been telling me for the last 2 months. What the hell? Just take a leap of faith. Well, where? I'm ready to jump off the cliff, but where? Where's the cliff? Let me go. Like, I have no clue. So just trying to like, okay, what piece do I need to know? And it's just always something about the chariot would come up, and then like the fool will come up, and then something indicating a shift in journey. And so, okay, well, maybe so sometimes the tarot is not the tool. It's giving me all it has. So sometimes switching the tool, going to runes or your pendulum or check out another video on some of this stuff.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, nice segue.
But, or the runes or something, because they have the language. So it's a different language. Sometimes I need a different language to get down to a more specific thing. If they're then still saying the same shit, then I put it away. Walk away completely. I need to focus. Okay. So recently I just redid my website, so that was a different area of focus. Or I'll focus on a client and what they need, or I'll focus on work, or focus on Nick, or we'll do something completely different.
Which is really, if you can come at that from a playful point of view, isn't that what I shift my focus from this to this to this to this 100 times a day, and that's what keeps my life sane for me, like, because I can give you different pieces of me, you know, different perspectives of who I am, different facets of me. Everyone requires something different. So isn't that kind of what we're doing to become a whole person? I was just going to point out the big picture.
For me, if I'm forcing or not wanting to hear, I have to get up and move. I have to go do something physical to like let the energy dissipate, because it just, I feel it all coming in, and then I feel knotted up.
Yeah.
So then I have to go be physical in some way.
Hike or whatever. If it's at work, I'll go out and I'll literally just sit on the dock, or I'll smudge. Like, I'm the weirdo at work, so I'll smudge, or I'll go talk to the damn tree or something. Like, this moving, from one space to another is also like, or if I'm getting stuck, sometimes if I'm getting stuck working on my website or some sort of project, I will take that same project in a different area, different environment. That also can sometimes help. Just shift it enough to be able to, your perceptions are.
Well, if you think about like the law of attraction here, you're gonna want to, like, if something's moving away you don't want it to, you remove your focus from it and put it on something else. So it seems really natural to, that's how you stay in the flow. You guys just said everything I ever wanted to hear in my whole life. Wonderful. Lucky you.
Yeah. Another thing with the Planetary is, and I think we've touched on this briefly in another video somehow, some way, but it doesn't have to affect you as deeply as it does others. And it doesn't, so sometimes some people feel a lot more deeply, or the whole collective stuff, like, oh, I'm feeling really heavy and sad, something's happening collectively. You are allowing yourself to feel into that. Sometimes just because this is the collective norm, like I said, maybe Randy, we mentioned the hey, okay, sometimes it might affect someone differently. They might be attuned differently. Or you can just say, hey, I'm not subscribing to this right now. I'm not subscribing to this. I see you, I'm aware of it, but I can shift enough to not let it, like, I see, and I think that's the surrender part of it. Like, okay, I see retrograde Mercury. I'm going to choose to still do what I need to do, but I'll come at it in a different way. Maybe I'll look over my emails. I'll reword things differently, whatever, but I don't have to feel like, it doesn't have to be a burden. Much way like the empathic stuff is, I don't have to subscribe to it being a negative attribute. I'll use it as a positive.
And so, like with the contract I signed, it was, I had a lot of questions on a few of the areas, and I made sure that I was like, okay, I'm going to write the date down. I'm going to write down the person who told me that this is what it was going to be, and write down the details so that if it happens in the future where they come back and say, no, according to your contract, I can say, no, remember, on March 2nd, you said this.
Hey, never underestimate the power of a good scribe.
Right, yes.
Right. Yeah. So sometimes what other retrogrades or planetary alignments, so even some positive planetary alignments.
How about
what are
just
some-
like full and new moons and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I think I'm more subscribing to like the moon cycle stuff than most of the planetary stuff.
Do you guys have rituals that you like? You don't miss a full moon or a new moon kind of thing where you live, eat, deep, work, breathe, die by it.
no, and I know some people who do, and it's very powerful for them, but my phone's ringing. Can you hear it? I'm obsessed with it. Who is it? What do they want?
Always good caller.
It's probably that potential
Potential
scam.
spam?
Yeah.
My
Best friend. Yeah, but no, I know some women who do really follow the moon cycles and do some really cool stuff and plan their practices, their business offerings around those. And yeah, it's powerful for them. It's just that I'm really not.
You're not alone.
I'm not a
I don't
consistent
do it.
person.
I don't either.
I'm not, no. I do whatever I feel in the moment.
Mhm.
You know, if it happens to fall where I'm aware of it enough to want to do something, great. But I think it's more of a personal, just again, more of an awareness. Oh, maybe I'll more of a gratitude, a lot of gratitude for moon cycles, new and full moon. I guess that's what I really hone in on this gratitude. My moon cycle links up with the moon cycle, so that helps.
Full or new moon though, because that's mine shifts back and
It
forth.
shifts back and forth. Right now it's the new moon, and so
Well,
Let's just talk.
I know.
half moon,
Well, while I-
man of the moon, moon made of cheese.
Well, I still have it. That might change at some point too. But we, yeah, that also is like when you, and I think for me in this frame of, it's more of like self-care, like real hardcore self-love, self-care. And that's part of just being aware of my body and what is it, how is it feeling with everything. And full moons and new moons are definitely a higher impact for my body than any other
I
planet.
definitely look forward to, that is not my forte or where I work, but I think that bringing that forward because it relates to your energy body and it normalizes energy body work. And this is how the planets and Gaia and your body and your physical body and your energy body and all these pieces all just sort of move and spin together. And if we can normalize it over the next, however many years it's going to take us, how much better off are we all going to be to be able to say?
I think, Mercury retrograde is very normal or becoming more normal, but those moon cycles, I mean, man, working in the hospital, people, from the ER would come up and they'd be like, oh my God, it's a full moon.
Mhm.
And we can already
I
tell.
remember those
Yep.
days.
Yeah, right? I mean, and that's even in the library world too. It's like, oh, it must be a full moon because it is crazy.
But just even people going, even if it's out of jest or funny or whatever, like, we said a full moon, where are we at? And they'll come, to the weird witchy one in the corner and go, what's going on? I'm like, well, then I'm trying to go like, well, we're at this part of the moon, we're doing this. I'm like, what I do know is, but I don't. Like, well, yeah. So they're like, okay, I wasn't expecting an actual answer, but okay.
Where do you think it went wrong, like time-wise? Like, where did things totally veer off course? Where obviously our ancestors honored the cycles of planetary alignment. Which,
Personally,
yeah,
I think it's when men went into power and started dishonoring women's. And because I think women follow cycles. Obviously, we have a cycle to follow, and
That would be hard for them to
I've
connect to because
never
they don't
been-
have a cycle either
Mhm.
in the same way we do. And they want,
what they want when they want it.
and when did the calendar come into play? The actual, what we subscribe to now. I know there's been various versions of calendars, but now, you know,
Right.
we have to track time. We have to track this, and that's a very masculine way of going about it versus just
Putting parameters around something that's
right.
very fluid.
Right. Today is July 12th or 13th. I don't even know, but
Right. So
you
when
know.
people say, "Oh, it's very human of you to want to compartmentalize," I don't. Maybe it's not human of us. Maybe that's
that's
masculine
masculine
of
of
us.
us. Ooh, I like that.
Versus being human, because that try explaining time to a child under the age of 4. It's nearly impossible. Like I think about 2 years ago, I said, screw this, I'm not focusing on calendars, days of the week, numbers, and those things to these kids that are that age. That is not where they are at. They need to learn about their bodies and, you know, social, like what's expected in a social environment. And I ditched all of the best practices from DHS, sorry, and went my own way on that, because I think the kids, if I can give them that foundation, they can do the other stuff in school.
Yeah.
I was gonna say when you're expected to be a certain place at a certain time, you know, like I have to work 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, like and to know what day is Saturday and what day, you know, when my free time is. It's very, I think that's when things kind of.
Because there was a revival, right? In the early 1900s, there was a revival of spirituality, but I think it might have been a little bit different in terms of, yeah,
Spiritualist?
yes,
Oh,
the
yeah.
spiritualist movement.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite. I don't think they honored the cycles of the moon or astrology in any way, shape, or form. It was about communicating with the dead. But I think everything prior to that really was coordinated with the land and the cycles, because you had to look at that stuff to know where you
Well,
were.
think about farmers, so maybe that's
Oh,
part of it too,
yeah.
like the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Oh
So-
my
We're
gosh.
doing
Yeah.
more factory farming, we're doing more of all that. You don't necessarily have to be as in tune with the fertile. Like, I mean, you do to an extent. A lot of them still, obviously,
You don't have to. I'll just pour chemicals on.
right. Right.
Well, in just doing a quick Google search, the Gregorian calendar was introduced by Pope Gregory the Ninth, I think, in 1582. But prior to that, there was a different one. So if that gives any context. Oh, Henry.
So just about that someday.
Girl, do not get me started. It would just be, can that just be my interview?
Yeah,
For sure.
yes, exactly.
Let's talk Tudor history.
To go back to a point that you kind of started to make, Randy, about when we were talking about like the rituals, and you said I don't really do that, and you know, Jen, you don't really do that. I don't do that either, and I'm seeing a lot of activity on social media of like, oh God, I need to get my crystals out. I need to set my crystals out. I need to clean this, and I need to do this, and I need to do the moon water, and it's like, chill. You're missing the point by spazzing about it, and it's like, I'm the same way. I just do things like that when I feel called. I used to, there's a gal that I watch online on YouTube who does crystal gridding, and it's fascinating to watch how she does it, and she sets intentions, and she usually works with the moon cycle. And I'm not that regular about it. I'll do it when I feel called to, and then I'll use like the crystals or whatever that I feel called to use. But I think we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves as humans. It's a very human thing
Very masculine
to
thing.
do that. And it's like, just do what you feel called to do. Now, if you're somebody that is routine and rote about it, and that's what brings you comfort and that's what helps you stay organized, fabulous. But don't feel like you need to put the pressure to do what Susan is doing or what Jasmine is doing. It's like, just do what you feel called.
I think there's a part of that, because I remember my initial into this, like you wanting to soak up everything, do
Right.
everything. And there's this, I've seen a lot of people, because it is becoming more mainstream. Hello, witch talk.
Yeah.
You know, like it's becoming more mainstream in the Gen Z era. So there's this excitement with it, and there's this wanting to learn, and there's this wanting to, I want to try this, and if I don't want to miss out on this opportunity to have this experience.
FOMO.
Yes, fear of missing out is hardcore.
It is hardcore.
So I think it's really exciting to see now that I've been through that. As Randy knows, she experienced part of my
Your FOMO.
FOMO.
You guys FOMO together. It's just you FOMO together, stay
You're
together.
also just a Gemini, so I
I
mean,
know, that's true.
that's just part of you.
I know. But like, it's cool to see that excitement.
Yes.
It's like, yes,
Absolutely.
I
It's
want you.
encouraging.
I want you to, and if you're like, oh shoot, I want to go get this out. It's what I have to, and I should, and it'll tame. I think it'll temper.
Don't you think that the road, when you said that about it being, like, if you're, I think that some of that takes the emotion and the connectivity out of it. Like, if you're doing something because now is the specified time to do it, I think that does take some connection out of it, which then would make your spell, your ritual, your practice, whatever, less effective if you're not fully connected to it. So,
But I mean, I can see too if you're a newbie, right? And the road is just how you have to do it because you don't really know what you're doing. It's how you're going to learn. It can turn into a really powerful ritual for you.
Sure.
But then as you grow in that ritual, you won't need to do it as often either.
just like meditation, I can hardly call what I do meditation anymore. It's something different, but
There's nothing wrong with having a routine while you're learning, but then once you know how to do the thing, be mindful of why am I doing it?
Yeah.
Why do I do it this way?
How do I feel?
Exactly. And if you don't like it, then try something different.
Right back to planetary stuff. Which is there a planet that I associate more with? Like, maybe I like working with Venus over Saturn or whatever. And that's going to tell a lot about you as a spiritual being too, which planet you, like, this feels good when I'm doing this in, say, Venus retrograde, or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that the planetary alignments and what you feel during them, whether it's a retrograde or not, will say a lot about your little pathway, or maybe if you subscribe to like the deities and what do they, connect with and all of that. Some of these planetary alignments, it's not all that bad.
No.
Like, so we keep honing in on retrograde, but I'm trying to think of some positive, when this
Okay.
comes
I don't
in,
know it that well.
I don't even know.
Mercury retrograde is a great time to finish up projects that you've already started. So for me, being the kind of procrastinator that I am, it's a really great time because I'm like, I gotta get this shit done. Like, this is my window.
So when it's almost like when it's done and over, I have a fresh start to start something new. I can get into a new.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Well, and don't forget there's gateways and portals and there's all kinds of stuff our planet experiences, that solar winds, all kinds of stuff, the Schumann resonance.
That one affects me very physically.
Tell us about that.
The Schumann resonance, it's like energy that gets popped off from the sun and comes
Like a
at
solar
us.
flare.
It's like the heartbeat it's like the vibrational frequency of Mother Earth. And since we are her, we feel that as well. And if you can look up the Schumann spike, it's responsible for a lot of headaches because it responds to, it means more light, basically, more light to yourselves.
But there's electronics respond to that too. So there is scientific basis to that, which I think is really interesting because there's scientific basis to the moon's pull too, right? But yet I was reading some articles yesterday on this just to kind of be prepared, and there was a website all about scientific answers to your spiritual questions, and they were like, there's nothing to this astrology stuff. And I'm like, that's bullshit.
They get you all pumped.
Not really. I just clicked out of it. I was like, whatever.
Just because it's a scientific explanation doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. It's just kind of another language to explain what's happening.
Well, and also it's like, why not both? We can have
Right.
That's where I'm at as well.
You
I
can be
think
bilingual,
yes,
spiritually,
yes.
multilingual spiritually, right?
Yes.
use this as your foundation and then keep asking questions.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't ever want to stop learning. That's bottom line. I don't ever want to stop.
Have you all ever had an astrology chart done or a reading or? Yeah.
I
And
would like to
so-
do it again. Now that I had my base and I
Mhm.
had to kind of sit with it. Now it's really cool. I just was reading too. Thanks, Witch Talk, for getting me down a rabbit hole to research. But originally when is like, what is your sign? Used to mean your rising sign,
No.
wasn't it?
No, it was.
That's
yeah,
what I
but
meant.
yeah.
It used to be what they meant was what is your rising sign, not what is your sun sign.
Right.
Because your rising
Oh.
sign is you
Oh.
at
Yes.
your core.
It's like what's trying to come above the,
Right.
up to the
I'm a
surface.
sexy planet then.
Are you Scorpio? I'm Scorpio.
Venus, lady.
Oh, what?
I think
Sexy planet?
sexy is Scorpio to me. I guess
I'm- You're talking about planets. I'm talking about astrology signs.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
Okay.
bad. Sorry.
It's okay.
No.
Did you see how confusing it can get?
See, this is why I just planets are hard.
There's a lot to them. So I would like to get back to, I would love to have another astrology reading to see what more, because I've been tuning into ever since then, more to my rising and my moon sign.
Me too.
And I'm a Gemini sun, explains a lot. But I'm also a Pisces moon and Pisces rising.
So your sun
That's
sign,
double.
your sun sign is what you show the
Show.
world,
Yes.
and then what you're trying to bring forward is your
Your rising.
your rising sign.
And what your moon sign is your inner
Yes, your emotional.
emotional, what you feel your truest self is.
Yeah.
Versus your external self.
My sun sign is what I show the world.
Yeah.
My rising is
What you're trying to bring forward.
Kind of, some people say it's your core of who you are. Your
It's
true
who you're trying to
Sandwiches.
become.
Yeah.
It's who you're trying to bring forward.
Right.
who I is. And then what's the other one?
The moon,
The moon.
Your inner self, how you view yourself, and
your emotional.
yeah. So I'm heavy Pisces, so it's really interesting to read your astrology now and all your
Yes.
your horoscopes and all the stuff based on. So always read both. Always read all three of them if you can. Especially so all of the astrologers that I've seen said, if you're going to look at any of your astrology or your horoscopes, look at your rising sign or your ascendant sign, because that is what's going to be most resonant for you.
Yep.
Your sun and your moon obviously play an important factor, but so I was like, that changed the game for me.
Yeah.
I was like, I can
Me too.
this makes sense. I feel more like I know.
I got so much to say.
Grab that mic, baby.
Yeah.
No, because like I was always like, oh, I'm Sagittarius, duh, I'm Sagittarius, but I'm very emotional and passionate too. And then once I figured that out, my ascendant sign is Scorpio, which is like, oh, all right, that's where the fieriness comes from. That's where that comes from. I'm a
Scorpio's
good
fire
time
sign.
gal in two different ways.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
Well,
But it's cool to track. It helps with the astrology, like, okay, what is this planet? What's it housed in? What's its core? And then you know when it goes into retrograde, what's it reflecting? What's it asking us to review? So the more you know your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the easier. Get a deck too. There's so many astrology decks.
astro.com. Just go to
Easy, all right.
astro.com
Yeah.
and plug in your information. You'll have your chart there, and they save it for you. And you can always go back and refer to it.
Take it, chunk it out. I don't know a whole hell of a lot. I know more about myself than anything, but it's
I
fun to
think-
look at.
The baseline of all of this is just awareness, cultivating an awareness that we are complicated human beings. We're layered, multidimensional beings. We've got planetary alignments and all kinds of shit that's playing into how we just feel, not even moving, just existing.
Right.
Right? There's all these other factors coming in, and you haven't even done anything yet. It's just who you are as a person. And I think to awaken that within a person alone is going to take ascension a whole step further, and just awareness and normalizing. Normalize the woo. That's the part of the memes that is good.
It is.
Because
it gives
memes
people-
have become just this sort of social concept where like this is how we communicate with each other. I talked to my daughter like, what have you been doing for 45 minutes? Reading memes for 45 minutes. You've been and then I'm like, on my own phone,
Right.
scrolling through memes.
It helps explain. Well, it's that storytelling in picture.
And with the picture, and it
helps us tell the story. This is coming back to our kind of our root primal instinct, which is really cool, layered on top of like what's happening and explaining things without having to find. Sometimes you can't find freaking words.
I know all about that.
Yeah.
I don't do well with words some days. When I write, I do better. But. All right. Do you feel like we covered that?
I
Okay.
don't know if I have much more to
I
add to
know.
it.
Yeah.
Use it as an awareness versus an excuse, spiritual bypass, or blame, or whatever. Just once you have that awareness, once you know better, you can do better.
100%. I need to be tattooed on my forehead.
So,
Forgive thyself.
Oh,
Once you know better, you can do better.
right.
All right. So we're going to link that other video about the tools and what to do with this. I kind of said that as a
We'll
reminder.
add the link for astro.com
Yeah.
Yep.
as well.
Okay. Anything else?
Just make sure you add your questions or comments, and we will address those at the end of the month.
Yes. All the questions, comments.
All things.
All right. See ya.